Taylor's in the building.
Already the show goes on all night till the morning. We dream so long. Anybody ever wonder when they would see the sun? Just remember when you come up, the show goes on. Already the show goes on all night till the morning. We dream so long. Anybody ever wonder when they would see the sun? Just remember when you come up, the show goes on.
Have you ever had the feeling that you was being had? Don't that shit that make you mad? They treat you like a slave, put chains all on your soul and put whips up on your back. They be lying through they teeth, hope you slip up off your path. I don't switch up, I just laugh, put my kicks up on they desk, unaffected by...
Thank you guys for tuning into another episode of State of the Jungle, presented by First Star Logistics with yours truly, Malik Wright. Might look a little bit different, just me and Daniel. Evan and Logan could not make it today, but guess what? We're still going to come live at you guys a little bit earlier than our usual time to discuss all things Cincinnati Bengals, including will the Cincinnati Bengals draft an edge rusher at 18? Will the Bengals even stay at 18? Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff to discuss. But before we do, as always, we appreciate you guys for spending your Wednesday afternoons or evenings with us. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn on post notifications and on ours YouTube channel, as well as the First Star Media Group YouTube channel. Remember, every single State of the Jungle is simulcasted on the First Star Media Group YouTube channel and the Sit Down Malik Wright's YouTube channel. But Daniel, the Cincinnati Bengals met with a plethora of defensive linemen today.
Yep.
It is no secret the Bengals need to get better when it comes to rushing the passer. I was happy to talk to Chop Robinson today, Jared Verse today, and get them to basically admit, hey, we met with the Cincinnati Bengals. They were formal meetings, and it puts things into perspective of not necessarily that the Bengals are 100% going to draft an edge, but it does show that they are realizing to themselves, hey, we need to get better at rushing the passer because what we currently have is not cutting it. That's not to say Myles Murphy will, improve, because I do believe in Myles Murphy. I do believe Myles Murphy will improve. I just believe that they need some more juice. Now, I think the juice that they could use is on the interior side. I think if they are able to get juice from the interior side of things, I think it would make a world of difference. I have more thoughts, more things that I want to say, and things that I'm quote unquote hearing. But Daniel, what say you?
So when we talk about the discourse of, the first round, right? The first round, and just to really simplify it, the NFL draft is for getting talent. Free agency is for filling needs. So everybody can obviously discuss, well, you've got Trey Hendrickson, you've got Myles Murphy, and I'm of the same belief they're going to give Myles Murphy reps, and I'm of the belief that Trey Hendrickson is one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, but we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't discuss the edge rushers at the top of the class. To start it off, Jared Verse, we talked with him today. First off, his film is absurd when you watch him in the run game. 6'3", dominant pass rusher, dominant force, can take on double teams. He's a guy who could potentially be there, and immediately, day one, he is going to step in and would be a force and could develop into, a dominant pass rusher, as well as he's great in the run game. You look at one of my favorites. We talked about him a lot, Chop Robinson. He did great with the media today. And with him, you're getting a potential all-pro guy. He's, an elite get-off, a guy who's speed, elite athleticism, bend. These are guys that can bring juice to the Bengals pass rush. So if you're on the board at 18, right, and we're discussing whether it's you can go offensive tackle, a project guy, you can go an interior defensive lineman like Byron Murphy, or you can go with an edge rusher like Chop Robinson. I wouldn't, we'll talk about it more, but Chop Robinson and Jared Verse are two talents that you should not be upset if they are the pick at 18.
You talk about a guy that is moving up draft boards, at an alarming rate. It's crazy. It's almost much like the discourse we saw with Kalijah Kancey last year. Byron Murphy is a guy that I thought at one point in time, oh, for sure, this is a guy that's going to be there at 18. How the hell? I don't even know if he's going to be there at 7. This is the discourse with him. You want to talk about every single team has been enamored with him and what he could bring to their football program. Man, I think that it's going to be very tough to think that guy. I'm only talking about him on a larger scale, if you will, because you had brought him up. I don't think he is going to be anywhere near the Bengals vicinity.
You're saying Byron Murphy.
Byron Murphy. I think he's going to be gone, man. And I think his stock is only going to improve as the process continues, man. It's exciting. It's exciting. You know, I think that sometimes we find ourselves realizing that teams may overthink the draft process and sometimes get in their own way about the draft process. And but I think that a guy like Byron Murphy is a guy that's going to continue to shock and prove to people that, hey, listen, I am worthy of the hype, and I'm a guy that you should spend your pick on.
Yeah, and just looking at it once again, how I view this, I'm of the same belief. First thing when I saw Byron Murphy, it's going to sound kind of crazy. His pass rush looked kind of like Aaron Donald-esque. And when we saw him at the podium, he discussed the dude played running back. He told us he played running back. So he is a physical specimen. He's definitely smaller. He's not 6'4". He's about 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I think both him and Jermaine Newton, there's a possibility both of those guys are gone. But if we're
It's crazy. I think Jermaine Newton might have a better shot at being there still than Byron. I really do.
Yeah.
And listen, both guys can test freakish. And
Yep.
I don't know if Newton's doing much at the combine, but I'm just saying, I just think that both guys, even on their pro day, whether it's pro day, combine, whatever, I think both guys can improve their draft stock, obviously, because people do tend to sometimes take what you do at your pro days at the combine more into consideration than obviously the film.
Yep.
Which sometimes I don't understand that for the life of me, because I think a lot of great players out there get left in the dust because we overthink things and we get in our own head about things. But I think those are two guys that are freaks that can shoot up the draft boards, and it just wouldn't shock me if both guys were picked in the top 12. It just wouldn't shock me at all.
And one of the things I've definitely learned, especially from, having the pleasure to be able to come to the combine, I'm grateful and lucky to be here, is the discourse that happens. I love that we're using this word discourse. The discourse that happens before.
I feel bad because I keep using it.
when you have these conversations before the combine and after the combine, I tend to believe what we already see before the combine, right? And I'm with you. I think the discourse after the combine and before the draft, there's going to be a lot of people saying Byron Murphy is defensive lineman number one over Jermaine Newton, because I know he dealt with injuries. We don't know if he's completely testing. So it is crazy to think about that. But I'm of the belief Newton is a better prospect than Murphy.
Well, let's keep it on focus here, right? Because we're talking about, obviously, the interior pass rush. We're talking about how the Bengals realize that they need to get stronger in that department. They need to get better in that department. Well, listen, I love the fact that they're talking to edge rushers. I love the fact, and it doesn't mean that necessarily they're going to draft said guy that they're talking to. The chances of a Jared Verse being there are probably slim. Maybe Chop Robinson is there. And listen, this is a guy that there's one word I would use to describe Chop Robinson: violent.
Yeah.
I would say he is violent in the pass rush department. He is disruptive. He is violent. He is consistent. And that's the biggest thing that I look for. Like, to me, as an Alabama Crimson Tide guy who got a chance to watch a lot of games, there were a couple pass rushers, or a pass rusher or two, I would say, without saying any names, that was going through the process, that were, played for us each and every single game. And I just felt like they took plays off. And I felt like we didn't really see everything that they had to offer. And I think that, if you guys haven't realized I'm talking about Dallas Turner, I believe that he is a good player. I just don't believe that for what the Bengals are looking for. I feel like Dallas Turner is more of a project than what people are even willing to admit, honestly speaking, right? So I think that's why the focus for me, because I do think Dallas Turner is a guy that could actually be there, honestly. But that's why the focus for me is a little bit more on these other edge rushers, who I think are a little bit more polished, man. What are your thoughts?
No, I think when you look at it, right, the edge rusher class is elite, and you said the word violent for Chop Robinson. I'm going to use another word. I guess it's 3 words. He's always one step ahead. And that's when you watch the film. He is one step ahead. Whether it's his get off, it looks like he's jumping off sides. The dude is an elite athlete. He's explosive. And once again, if you guys are watching this, we appreciate you guys. Comment down below any questions. Just keeping it with the edge rushers, man. Dallas Turner is good. He put out a lot of good tape. He was very productive. If I'm going edge rusher in round 1, I want Jared Verse or Chop Robinson. And the reason why is I see elite potential with those guys. Dallas Turner could be elite, sure. What I've seen out of him is he's going to be a productive NFL player. But round 1, you want talent. You want something that's going to be potentially elite. And I think that's Jared Verse and Chop Robinson. I don't believe that's Dallas.
Let's talk more about Chop Robinson, because you did a lot of film work on him.
Yeah.
What do you think makes him stand out amongst all the edge rushers? Because obviously you can rush the passer. Me personally, when I watch Chop Robinson, I feel like he has a a very versatile pass rushing repertoire, if you will. And I feel like he has still more tools to add to that. But I'm really curious, what are in your thoughts, because you watch a lot of film, Daniel.
I appreciate
What are your thoughts on what separates him?
Yeah.
Curious.
So we got a question. I'll get to that after. We'll keep discussing all these defensive lineman prospects. Chop Robinson, when I watch him, first off, he went up against great competition like Michigan. It was just, it's his get off. That's the first thing, right? It makes these offensive tackles look like they don't belong. It makes them look like they are just one step too slow. So for me, when you look at pass rushers, especially heading into NFL, you need the tools because you can you can hone them in. But if a dude is not explosive, if a dude does not have a great get off, you can't change that. You can't change that into the NFL. It is, what are you born with? What have you worked at? And Chop Robinson's biggest attribute, 1000%, is the dude is explosive. And when you look at the Bengals, that's what they're lacking, right? When you look at the other edge rusher spot, Sam Hubbard is a great run defender. Sam Hubbard is a great producer. But is he an explosive athlete? That was never his MO. So Chop Robinson is a guy where I truly believe in his future, he could be an all-pro pass rusher. He is a guy who has swim moves, who has a spin move, who is his ability to just get off the edge, the offensive tackle, and create havoc on quarterbacks is elite. And another thing, when I was watching this film, I had this written down, is his pursuit in the run game as well. He may not be the bulkiest guy. He may not be a dominant run stopper like Jared Verse, but the dude's pursuit and his motor is elite. He will be heading after the quarterback, and maybe he misses his assignment, but goes all the way back around, goes back and gets the running back. So for me, he's got the pursuit, he's got the motor, and the pass rush explosiveness, man, is something that that can't be replicated. And man, I truly believe this dude can be an all-pro guy. Like, he is the one. Even I personally would even maybe, I think him and Jared Verse are 1A and 1B in this edge rusher class. And I truly believe both guys could be all-pro edge rushers.
And I think the biggest thing to remember throughout this entire process, especially for me, is the focus is not that we're unhappy with Trey Hendrickson. That focus isn't that you're unhappy with Sam Hubbard, even though that you obviously want more out of Sam in the pass rush department. The focus is, hey, let's limit these guys as snaps, so when playoff time comes around, they have enough juice to still bring it, man, and they're not burnt out. And I think that's the discourse that needs to be understood, and reason why we're saying, hey, the Bengals have tried, right? They have tried to add to the pass rush department. They have tried to try to steal snaps away from Sam. They have tried to steal snaps away from Trey Hendrickson to make life easier on these guys, so these guys have juices moving forward, right? With the drafting of Joseph Asai, with the drafting of Miles Murphy, right? With Cam Sample being added into the rotation. So they've done their part, and they've done it well. I would say they've done it consistently, and they've tried. But guess what? You could draft players, and guess what? You could be like, hey, this guy looks like he has the chops. This guy, I believe, can, spell some of those snaps for a guy like Trey Hendrickson. Some of these guys who are older that are reaching that point to where they can't play thousands and thousands of snaps, if you will. And, the fact of the matter is, you're just looking to see more out of it. You're looking to see more out of it, especially for a team that lives in the playoffs like the Bengals. Obviously, this year was an anomaly, but for the most part, the Bengals are trying to stay, atop of the heap, if you will. And I think one thing that hurt them in the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs was the pass rushing department lacked, right? It hurt them in that game, and Patrick Mahomes had all time to throw. But that aside, even down the stretch here, when Trey Hendrickson's not there, when Sam Hubbard's not there, right, you start to see a huge drop-off in the pass rush department, and that's not something really the Bengals can afford. I think there are players on the Bengals that I feel like don't get enough praise, like BJ Hill. I think is a guy that has stepped up time and time again to the plate. He's a guy that has, I would say, overperformed, right, his contract value, right? Because right now, if you had to say, hey, BJ Hill, let's redo that contract that we just paid you, he's probably getting a lot more money than what the Bengals kind of got him at, which at this point is looking like a bargain. So what the Bengals are trying to do this draft class is they're trying to look for every which way to try to get more juice from the pass rushing department. If you ask me, I still believe at my core, the pick at 18, if they stay pat at 18, is going to be interior defensive line. I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't think it's going to be an edge. I think they're going to be too many opportunities, too many guys out there at 18 that the Bengals are going to have the pick of the litter. I really believe that. And I think it's just going to be too good to pass upon. I also think offensive line is definitely something you could look at.
Yeah.
But they've been trying to find a replacement, or not even a replacement, just somebody that can add value since Geno Atkins retired. It's something that hasn't happened. It's something that they've been vying for. It's the reason why they went with that brilliant strategy of, hey, let's sign Larry Ogunjobi. Let's trade for BJ Hill, and let's hope it works out. Let's hope we're getting enough juice out of both of those guys. So if one guy is tired, they spell it. But they have not had that one consistent young guy that they could grow with, that they could build with. BJ Hill had already been in the league, and he was not an original pick. Larry Ogunjobi was here for a year, was productive, but he went to a divisional rival. So if the Bengals can somehow get, more juice from a pass rushing standpoint, and it be a guy that they draft and that they can build with, especially, how crucial having that fifth-year option is, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer, and it's something that they've lacked for quite some time. So that's just my thoughts.
Yeah. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and that would be the ideal situation, right? A Jerzon Newton, a Byron Murphy, because that's where talent fits need. Those are the two interior defense linemen I would 1000% be like, hey, if that's the pick at 18, great. When you look at edge rushers, once again, Jared Verse, Chop Robinson, great. Dallas Turner is, once again, we talked about this. He's good. He can be a productive player. I'm not seeing the superstar. I'm not seeing the all-pro potential. But just looking overall, right, because there is a world where they go something else. I wouldn't be too happy if it's, if a Verse or if a Newton and Byron Murphy is on the board and they go with a tackle like an Amarius Mims, or if they go with a tackle like a JC Latham, or if they go with a tackle like even a Fuaga, because I truly believe those two interior defensive linemen and those edge rushers are talented enough that you've got to take them over filling a need at right tackle.
Let's be honest. If we're being real and pragmatic about the whole thing, Amarius Mims should not be even considered here. I know you are in love, not you, but the teams are in love with the measurables and the potential. And I hate that word. I hate when people say potential. I hate when people say, oh, they have the skill set or the intangibles to be such and such, but you haven't been able to see it. Now, his big thing is health. Guess what? The best availability is availability. And if you're not available for your team, what good is it to be drafted at 18? If you weren't able to stay healthy at the college level, guess what? Competition gets stiffer in the NFL.
Yep.
And that's not to say this guy won't go on to have a Hall of Fame career. He could make me put my foot in my mouth and not know what I'm talking about, but I'm not drafting him at 18. I think the pick at 18 is too rich, too valuable to spend it on a guy that spent most of his college career injured. And I think that's a fair statement.
1,000%.
I think that's a fair statement.
1,000%. And once again, you have one chance to get this right.
Correct.
In the first round.
Correct. No more projects. A project is not necessary. You took Myles Murphy and you knew that was a project, but he's a project with high upside and a guy that you've got to obviously feel comfortable about. But I just think that Amarius Mims is a project in the standpoint of you have to teach techniques. You have to make sure that he's ready from a health standpoint. And to me, that's the biggest red flag aside from everything else. That's the biggest red flag. It's availability, because what has hurt the Bengals in the playoff runs that they have gone on. It's been when they get to the playoffs, the offensive line isn't healthy.
No.
You don't want to be in a situation where you have to start a Jackson Carman at left tackle again if you don't have to. So don't put yourself in that situation. Enough of these projects, especially when you already had that tag about you that you guys don't know how to draft offensive line correctly. This is an obvious red flag, so don't do it.
So just to add on to going with defensive line over an offensive line, I believe we were talking to one of the GMs yesterday, and they said in the playoffs, the pass rush only gets better. First, you got 8 teams, then you got 4, and he's like, look at the final 4 teams, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Lions, and the 49ers. What is the common theme with all 4 of those teams? They have a dominant pass rush. When you look at the Cincinnati Bengals the past 2 years, did they have a dominant pass rush from their front 4? No. They had an elite pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson. Lou Anarumo does a great job scheming up blitzes, but if you can find a way to get a pass rush with 4.
Well, the year that they went on the Super Bowl run, they really had a good pass rush unit, and that's what made life easier. It was perfect. You had DJ Reader, and there for 1 and 2 down, you had Larry Ogunjobi next to him. You had BJ Hill or Larry spelling DJ, so that way you get 2 interior 3 techs sort of rushing the passer. Then you obviously got Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson doing their thing. And guess what? Sam Hubbard went on to have one of his better seasons from a rushing the passer standpoint. You were able to see this pass rushing unit had life about them. You had playmakers all on the defensive line, right? That hasn't been anything of the sort since that Super Bowl run. It's actually taking a dip back in a major way. So guess what, Bengals? You have the ability to correct that. It's been in your Achilles heel. Geno Atkins, obviously, when he retired, you knew at some point this was going to come to a head. You knew at some point we're going to have to try and replace those snaps somewhere, some way, right? So for me, it's simple. If a defensive tackle is staring at you in the face, you don't get cute. You don't say, oh my God, we want Brock Bowers. No, you secure the tight end position before the draft even happens. That's not to say Brock Bowers isn't a great talent. That's not to say he's not a great talent. But in free agency, right, if you pigeonhole yourself, you're going to be wind up having to spend upwards to what, 15, 16, 17 million to draft the guy, because obviously we know what happens in free agency. The value of these guys go up so astronomical. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation, okay, fill certain needs. And you could still add veterans, right, on relatively respected deals. But the likelihood of a defensive tackle you want being there at 18 versus a tight end being there that you want at 18, drastically different in my opinion. To me, I think interior defensive line makes a lot of sense. And I understand you should also try to draft best player available. The thing I think the best player available for the Bengals is going to be an interior defensive line.
1,000%. Whether it's interior defensive lineman, we obviously can talk about Jackson Powers-Johnson. Huge fan of him.
Beast. Yeah. And guess what? If that's it, I'm not upset.
Give me Jackson Powers. I would take Jackson Powers-Johnson,
all right.
man.
Listen, because guess what? That's an obvious fit. A lot of people have been complaining about the process, I would say, of a guy like Cordell Volson, and they're like, hey, when is this guy going to finally get it, right? I don't think that's completely fair to a 4th round pick, a guy that I feel like has shown a lot of flashes. He's still a young player, still going to grow within the system. And guess what? Consistency is the biggest name of this game. I don't feel like he's been so god-awful to the point where you have to be like, oh, he just never could be anything in the league. I feel like he's been better than what we have had. And maybe that's saying something. Maybe that is where I'm like, okay, Malik, you're seeing it from a different lens. I don't know.
No, you're right. And real quickly, I'm a huge fan. Once again, Jackson Powers-Johnson, you will have people telling you guys, right, well, that's not a need. They've got 3 guys there. Once again, you are drafting for talent. A guy like Jackson Powers-Johnson, if he is the pick at 18, you cannot be upset at it, because the dude is an elite talent. He can play all 3 interior offensive lineman spots. He is a force in the run game. He is absolutely agile, great feet. The dude just elite, man. So he's in the conversation. And once again, it's if he's there at 18, you cannot be mad if they take that over, an offensive tackle. But I want to talk real quick tight ends. Like you said, you asked the question yesterday to Duke Tobin, and you actually got a funny response. He actually laughed, and I thought good because you asked him about the tight ends, and he said, yeah, it was a revolving door. That's not their goal, right? They don't want a revolving door at tight end. And if you can fill that before getting to the draft, you don't have to rely on waiting on Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a great talent, like we said, but still, he is still a prospect, right? And we have seen the trend with tight ends in the NFL. It is very rare that they come in and dominate in the first year. It's rare. We saw Sam Laporta was one of the only guys ever, in NFL history to dominate in year 1 as a tight end.
It's rare, for sure. 100%.
So, we got some questions if you want to talk a little bit about some of these guys. Real quick. So first off, Latu. I just want to talk, we talked with him here at the Combine, UCLA defensive end. The issue with him is he medically retired 3 years ago, but then he came back. He's got all the skills in the toolbook. He's got the swim move. He's got the spin. He's got the bull rush. He's got everything, athletic skills. But when you're looking at a guy like him too, man, there is a lot of questions about the injury history. So in my opinion, Jared Verse and Chop Robinson are above him just because injuries do play red flag. And you will see many times teams will knock guys down the board due to injuries.
And I don't know if I wasn't able to confirm if the Bengals met with him or not. I don't believe they had. I don't believe they had. And I can understand because one of the biggest things with this Bengals culture that we talk so much about that Zac Taylor instilled is, do you love the game?
Yeah.
Do you love the game of football? Do you want to be a football player? And is it everything to you? Right. And you got to love the game. You got to want to be a part of something. And you got to be all in essentially. And I just don't know if that fits the mold of what they're trying to build. And that's no knock against him. Obviously, people go through tough times in life, right? So like, I don't want to bash the kid, but yeah.
Yeah. So Frederick was asking, we did talk about Jared Verse, but Frederick was asking, Malik, what's your thoughts on Jared Verse?
I love Jared Verse. I've been raving about him for quite some time. I'm a big fan of his. I don't know if he'll be there at 18. I would love for him to be there at 18. And yeah, man, I think whoever gets him, as he said, is getting a dog, is getting a guy that is willing to put the work in, that is consistent, that wants to get better at his craft. So yeah, I think Jared Verse is going to make whatever one of the 32 teams that draft him very, very happy that they did. And I think he's going to be he could be one of the top edges in the National Football League sooner before later. I believe that. I love Jared Verse.
I'm on the same boat. So once again, guys, we have 100 people watching. We appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you guys just like this video. And if you have any questions draft related, we're here at the NFL Combine, talking to the prospects, talking to the coaches. So let us.
The only thing we ask, if you guys just give this video a like, that's all it. No super chats, none of that. Give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That is it. We appreciate you.
So we got a question here from Devin Heiserman. We were just talking about him. How do you guys feel about T'Vondre Sweat, defensive tackle from Texas, 6'4", 360 pounds? How do you feel about T'Vondre Sweat?
I love him. I love him so much that guess what? If Jerzon Newton was there in the first round, I draft him. If T'Vondre Sweat was there in the second round, guess what, guys? I draft him. That's how much I like him.
Yeah.
That's how much I like the fit. You want to talk about solving the 3-tech spot, solving the defensive tackle spot for years to come? It's a no-brainer. And I think that's an area that you can constantly get. And that's not to say that the guys that you currently haven't done an admirable job. They haven't done a great job. But we're talking about going from good to being great. And that's what the good teams do. I love what let me just talk for a second.
Yep.
I love what the Philadelphia Eagles did last year. And they got a lot of flack for it. They doubled up, right? For back-to-back years. Jordan Davis, and then they drafted, what's the kid's name? The defensive tackle that came out of Georgia. Isaiah Carter, Jalen Carter.
Yep.
They drafted Carter. Listen, the fact of the matter is, necessarily, like you look at it, Jalen Carter is a guy that gets knocked because he had weight issues. They talked about his effort, and those were things that did rear its ugly head, I know for a fact, throughout the season. But the upside is so huge there. Could you imagine if you get Jalen Carter, you get Jordan Davis, both playing motivated at their very best? What would that Eagles defensive line look like? And you want to talk about why they found themselves deep in the playoff picture or in the playoff picture later down the road, is because they have that ability to take the steam off. They have those guys that are able to rush the passer and be consistent. And it opens up a world for everybody else. You think Hassan Reddick, and I love Hassan. He's great friends with my brother, the whole 9 yards. He played together at Temple. Do you think Hassan just automatically had one of the best years of his career? Just like, not this year, I'm talking about the year before when the Eagles remember, the Eagles have had a good defensive tackle rotation for quite some time. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox. And I'm talking about the Eagles because I'm talking about potentially adding 2 defensive tackles that could make the world a difference. So when we talk about those guys, look at a team like the Eagles that are very dominant on the interior side of things, and what a world of difference that can make. That's my thought process. So double dipping at defensive tackle is something that I'm all about. I'd be 100% on board for that if the board fell that way, because I think that you shouldn't be in a spot when the draft came where you have to sort of pigeonhole yourself. And the reason why, and you might be asking yourself, well, you might be pigeonholing yourself here by saying draft 2 defensive tackles. But no, I think the talent at the defensive tackle position is going to be staring you right in the face, especially for where you're picking, compared to saying, hey, I need a tackle. So does a bunch of other 30+ other teams in the league need a tackle, right? So that said tackle that you love or that you want might not be there. So why, when you have a pick of a litter from a bunch of defensive tackles and interior defensive linemen, why pigeonhole yourself when it comes to, a select few? Now, if Joe Alton's sitting there at 18, we could then talk. We could have a conversation about something completely different. But for me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I think one of the things I've definitely learned is and this may sound completely cliche, but you draft for talent. And it's what we've seen with, even the Cincinnati Bengals. A lot of times they've drafted a year ahead, right? If a guy is coming up on a contract extension the year in the future, like a Jesse Bates, they went out and they drafted Dax Hill. So don't be surprised if they don't go with that offensive tackle that, fits that need currently right now. That's not how teams always operate. But one thing I want to talk about, because you've got to talk about, right, the cornerback position really quickly in round one. There are going to be potential that some of the top guys do fall, right? I love Terrion Arnold. I love Quinyon Mitchell. Both of those guys are two that I wouldn't be upset with. I believe that they are two potential, all pro caliber cornerbacks. Terrion Arnold reminds me of a Patrick Surtain. Quinyon Mitchell is a guy that's risen up draft boards late.
So the only question I have for you with that,
Yep.
Let's dive deep into this.
Yes.
Who are you
Yeah.
Who is he replacing? Who is that
agree.
cornerback that everybody miraculously thinks the Bengals might draft in the first round, who I don't think the Bengals are going to draft in the first round? Who are they replacing? Whose snaps are they replacing? So then you have a pick that you got, a guy you picked at the 18th overall pick after investing 2 premium picks, the first, second, and DJ Turner, second last year. Cam Taylor-Britt, second, not first. I don't know why I said first. But you two guys, you invested 2 premium picks who've shown a lot of potential.
Yep.
If you're replacing anybody from the defensive back room, you're replacing a goddamn free safety. I'm just being honest with you. I'm being real. You're not replacing those 2 corners. You're not stealing those snaps away from those guys. I don't know.
No, I agree. And that's where it is the discussion that, once again, this is what they are going to be talking about in the war room. And hopefully I'm with you, because I'm confident Cam Taylor-Britt, I'm confident DJ Turner, but at the same time, they're going to have that conversation. It's a Terrion Arnold. You turn on the film, the dude is, man-to-man coverage
Very
corner.
good,
Quinyon Mitchell, the same exact thing, covered 3 scheme. I'm with you. I would, if Byron Murphy, Jerzon Newton, there's too many options on the board to go cornerback.
I'm scared Tavondre Sweat might even sneak into the first round. That's a fear of mine. That's a fear of mine. I really think that dude could sneak into the first round.
Honestly, yeah, I think he could. I'm not
You're not overly concerned about it?
I don't think. I mean, if he goes in the first round, that's fine. I don't think he's a first round talent.
Yeah.
I don't.
Would you draft him in the second?
I would draft him in the second. Yeah.
Heartbeat?
I mean, not necessarily heartbeat. Like, there are a lot of good, talented players that are going to be available in round 2.
I'm
but
drafting him.
I like him. I like him. And when you look at the defensive tackle class too, I think you made a great point. Don't be afraid to double up. I mean, we talk with guys, the guy out of Clemson, Arukoro. He's a guy that's going to be available second, third round. Mason Smith out of LSU, Braden Fisk, Florida State, Michael Hall, Ohio State. You're going to have your pick in the second round.
You heard what he told me today, right?
What he said?
I asked him, I said, blah, blah, blah. Like, tell me what makes you believe that you're ready for this? He says, turn on the tape. That's what he said with absolute confidence. No stutter in his voice. I'm talking about absolute confidence. He said, turn on the tape. And not in a cocky way. I want to be very, very careful about that. Not in a cocky way, in a very, very confident way. Turn on the tape. He said, I believe in the work that I put in. What you're getting in me, in his exact words, I'm going to put the interview up, is you're getting a dog. You're getting a guy. I ain't worried about anybody else. I'm worried about outworking myself and being the best version of myself. That's what he said. Turn on the tape. And he's kept repeating that. Turn on the tape. Not a Marshawn Lynch thing of I'm just here so I won't get fined, but just turn on the tape. My work speaks for itself. What I've been able to do, the career I've been able to carve out for myself, speaks for itself. So guess what? What I did right after that, I turned on the tape. I had to. Yeah. I had to, man. I had to. I mean, obviously I watched him already, but I had to turn on the tape again. And I said, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing. And it was crazy. I had no preconceived notions. I was simply asking the guy a question. He said, turn on the tape. So that's what we did.
No, I think, once again, you just look at this defensive line class, the first 2 rounds, you're going to have your pick. And that's why I am concerned that they are going to look at the depth and say, if there is a Jerzon Newton, Byron Murphy, that they would be okay with passing them up. I wouldn't in round 1. But at the end of the day, you're going to have your pick. Even Leonard Taylor, we talked to.
They've shot themselves in the foot before in the past, believing that a guy is going to be there. What's going to happen if there's just an absolute absurd run on interior defense linemen? We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen with teams in the league. Teams will see one guy get drafted. It's like what happens every year of the draft. A kicker gets drafted, and then what do you know? Like 3 teams draft a kicker if it makes sense, or special teams or a punter. And you're like, what the hell? This guy had no business being right where he is. But guess what? Teams will sometimes pick out of FOMO. What does that mean? Fear of missing out. That's what I'm serious.
Yeah.
Teams might go out there and do that, and they say, "Hey, we don't want to miss out on a guy. We don't want a guy to slip through the cracks." Because guess what? The way you have to think, especially when you get up there at pick 18, pick 20, damn, is that guy going to be there next round when we pick? And if the answer is I don't know, but you tell yourself we love the guy, guess what you do? You say, guys, we're drafting him.
Mm-hmm. No, completely. And that's gonna be the conversation. At pick number 8, going to have your pick of star guys. And we talked about, a lot already. We got a good question here from our guy Jared, or even he said, any chance that the Bengals pick a wide receiver in the first 2 rounds?
I think it would have to take a catastrophic fall for the Bengals to do that. But even that happening, I think that would take a catastrophic fall. A bunch of other people on their board suddenly just falling ill. No, just to make it clear, I don't see that. Second round, we can, depending on who's there, maybe, possibly. They are a team that has proven, at least the Duke Tobin badge, I would say, is they like to sometimes try to be the smartest people in the room, and they try to jump ahead on things. I don't know. I don't see it though.
Yeah, I'm of the same belief. I look at the wide receivers. It's only if Neighbors, Harrison Jr. or Rome Odunze falls, but at the same time, even
in the first.
Yeah, in the first round.
Okay, because I'm telling you right now, in the second round, there's a guy that I love from the University of Alabama, and his name is Jermaine Burton.
Yeah.
And when you talk about playmaker, that is what this guy is. He is the embodiment of a playmaker. That is what he does. He is fast as hell. He can catch. He is like lightning in a bottle when he has the ball in his hands. Yeah. The fact of the matter is, what I heard, I was talking to people this week so far. I said, hey, why aren't people talking about Jermaine Burton and what he could bring to a team? You know what they said? Attitude. Attitude. He had a couple incidents where he slammed his helmet, rubbed coaches the wrong way, yada, yada. Teams are looking at that like, does that guy have character concerns?
Yeah.
And I think that has why the discourse on Jermaine Burton hasn't been loud. Whether it be his pro day combine, whatever, I believe at some point he's going to shut those up. And that's what the combine is here for.
Yep.
That is why we're all here. It is for moments like this, for players that you're not so sure about. You get them in a room and you ask them, you grill them, you talk to them about those questions, because I don't want to mistake character issues for passion.
Yeah.
Let's not do that. Let's not mistake character issues for passion, because that same thing that you're blaming him for, I could point to Tyreek Hill.
Mm-hmm.
I could point to Jamar Chase. We have the pleasure of being in the First Star Logistics Suite each and every single week. And I've seen Jamar Chase slam his helmet on the sidelines more times than I can count.
Yeah.
I've seen it. That guy doesn't have character concerns. That's a guy that wants to win, and he wants to win bad, and he's passionate about it. So let's not confuse passion for character concerns.
Yeah, I think even the same thing goes for many quarterbacks in the NFL we've seen, right? Passion versus character concerns. I'm definitely with you. And just really quickly, just to add on to that, I think the Bengals' MO, especially for wide receivers, is they love just getting productive guys. Yeah. And you look at, Charlie Jones was extremely productive in college. Andre Yoshivas was extremely productive in college. Jermaine Burton was extremely productive in college. And there's something to be said when you just turn on a game, you're just watching a game, and that dude is just making play after play after play. That's Jermaine Burton.
Yeah.
And a couple other guys in that same realm for round 3, I would be happy with Roman Wilson, Jalen McMillan out of Washington, both guys. Roman Wilson out of Michigan was extremely productive. Jalen McMillan has the size to play all 3 positions. If I'm the Bengals, once again, I'm not opposed to drafting a wide receiver in the round 2, round 3, because you got Jamar, you got T. Higgins for now, but we'll see what their plan is for wide receivers in the future.
Yeah.
And just to make it clear, just because they have Andre Yoshivas and Charlie Jones does not mean they will not be selecting a wide receiver. They're good, and they potentially could be the starters. They could be great, but that is not going to stop this coaching staff from taking a guy in round 2 or potentially round 3.
Yeah. Our guard Devin Heiserman is asking a question about Brock Bowers.
Yeah, Devin Heisman said, "Is Brock Bowers even a possibility for the Bengals?" First off, if he gets there, right? We don't know.
Yeah.
We've seen guys
Yeah.
like him completely fall down the board.
For whatever reason. I mean, it could be whatever. We've seen guys fall for the weirdest things. And the weirdest thing, just so you guys are aware, the weird discourse right now going on, and here we go with the word discourse. The weird discourse right now going on with Brock Bowers is people are actually talking about that picture he took with Gronkowski at the Super Bowl and saying, is he big enough? I couldn't believe it. I said, come on, bro. Like, we're not
Yeah.
serious, right? But like, again, that's the part of the process where everything is magnified. Everything is magnified. And everything is looking at seriously. Hey, this guy didn't look that big. He looked like him and Gronk. And I quote what I heard today. This guy didn't even look like he played the same position as Gronkowski. Gronkowski like a monster. Also, let's not forget, Rob Gronkowski is like 6'7",
Yeah,
like
he's a
280
mammoth.
or whatever he is, right? Completely just jacked. And yeah, a lot of people are going to look very small next to Rob Gronkowski, especially a kid coming out of college who's 6'4", 250. Like, it's going to look that way. The other thing I heard about Brock Bowers, which I'll give you guys this little sneak peek. I'm going to be sitting down with two of my guys. One of my guys from PFF. You know what? I'll save that.
Yeah.
I'll save that. I'll be sitting down with a couple of my guys from the Draft Network and one of my guys from PFF, and we'll be talking about Brock Bowers. We'll be breaking him down. We'll be cooling down the hype on Brock Bowers. We'll be dissecting everything, because one thing that was said to me today that was a concern was, how would Brock Bowers do in the league when he's faced with more man-to-man coverage? Because people are saying, hey, like, this is a guy that he didn't face a lot of man coverage. He was kind of a lot of free releases. And to be honest with you, we don't know if it'll translate. Now, for me, I think that's a lot of people conjuring up things to, just to try to nitpick things. But I'm really excited to have that conversation tomorrow with those guys and just get both sides, because they both were on two separate sides of the spectrum. Both said, hey, he's a beast. I love him. I'm all right with him. And I'm curious to hear what everybody else is going to say when we break it all down, because I like Brock Bowers. I do. I think that he is a very good player, going to be a very good tight end in the National League, a very good pro. I believe that. I just think that we're in that stage, we're in that phase where we want to strip down a player and realize what we really got.
Completely.
So,
and
I know I went off on a tangent there.
No. Just, talking about Brock Bowers, I'm excited to see that piece. Once again, if you guys are watching this, stay tuned. We'll have more NFL Combine content, but
100%.
I'm excited for that. And like you said, you have to look at everything. And with Brock Bowers, when you watch his film, he's not having a lot of snaps as a true tight end off of the right tackle, off of the left tackle. So it remains to be seen. We'll see Brock Bowers. We've definitely got some more questions. We had somebody ask about potentially running back. This is from Daniel Jensen. Do you think that they'll take a running back in round 2 or in round 3? I think there's so many prospects at other positions that may fall there.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing them draft a running back at round 2. I think that's not happening at all. But round, I think once you get past round 2, it really just depends how the board shapes up. I just think that there's going to be a plethora of talent of players that you probably are looking at yourself saying, hey, this is a guy we need. This is a guy we want to get in our locker room that can help us. And it's going to be a little too difficult to pass up, especially for a running back, a position that, let's be honest with you, the league is starting to devalue, right? Where they're saying, they're taking the mantra, hey, we could draft a guy and then in 4 years we could replace him with another guy. So why would you spend a premium pick when you see other guys like Isaiah Pacheco getting drafted later, having the success that he's had? Why would you do it? It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So
yeah, I'm first off, I'm just excited to talk to the running backs in a couple of days. I'm with you. I mean, when you look at the talent, the same talent that is there in round 2, there's gonna be a lot in round 3. I mean, ton of mock drafts, but I mean,
you said George Holani is going to be there. What'd you say?
So
What'd you say? George Holani? You're a George Holani guy?
Listen, so I'll just put this out there. George Holani from Boise State. We're going to do a piece on him and we're going to talk to him, but he is a guy who is falling severely under the radar. No one's talking about him, right? He goes to Boise State, but he was a 5-star prospect out of high school. He was, recruited by Utah, recruited by Oregon, but he chose to go to Boise State instead. Boise State's not the greatest school, but he was extremely productive in all 4 years of his college career. His last game, he played against UCLA in a bowl game, rushed for over 150 yards. And when you look at for the Bengals, in my opinion, you want a guy who can break tackles. You
Right.
want a guy who can run between the tackles, outside the tackles. And first off, just make a guy miss.
Right.
When I look at the running back position, if you can make a guy miss, you are going to be on an NFL roster.
Yep.
George Holani can make a guy miss running through him outside of the tackles. The dude is a bruiser. He can do it on the goal line, and he can do it in the receiving game. George Holani, I truly believe, is a all-around running back who is discussed right now as a 5th round, 6th round prospect. PFF doesn't even have him on their mock draft. So when I look at George Holani, I'm just putting my claim out there now. He's going to be a very productive running back. I have a 3rd round grade on George Holani. So George Holani, day 3 is when I look at the Bengals probably taking a running back. He's a 6 foot, 220 pounds.
So
I think George would be a great
You're hearing
pick.
Daniel say it right there. He has a 3rd round grade on George Holani.
I do.
Marissa's, I can't tell if she's agreeing or she's disagreeing, but she definitely is feeling something after he said that. And I'm not sure if she's agreeing with him, but 3rd round grade on George Holani.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love him.
There we've got it. That's not my take. That's Daniel's take.
Yeah. I
running
love
backs
him.
are running backs to me.
And there's going to be a ton round 3, round 4.
Running
round
backs are
5.
not all made equal. I promise you that.
No, completely.
They're not.
So we got a question here from Matthew Heitzman. Malik, we both share a love for Noah Fant, but if the Browns don't re-sign Harrison Bryant, would you look at him as a possible tight end 1?
Guys, I feel like I am dying on this hill by myself in terms of members of media still believing in the potential of Noah Fant. And I'm going to continue to ride that. I will believe that Noah Fant at 26 years old has never had a good quarterback play in the league. And I've seen what the guy is able to do when he's had average quarterback play in the league for a limited amount of time. I will literally tell you this. If the Bengals were able to get Noah Fant, I believe it would be a game changer for Joe Burrow, and I believe it will be a game changer for this Bengals offense. That is all I'll say. I believe Noah Fant still has a lot of juice left, especially spending the last 2 years in Seattle and not being utilized because, we have
Colby Parkinson
and Will Dissly, who've been in our system. I think a lot of people forget the discourse around Noah Fant when he was coming out, as well as when he first was in the league, was he was a top X amount tight end. Like this guy was talked about, was given rave reviews, and you just don't magically lose that ability. You guys got hyped off of what's his name that was here in Cincinnati? Tanner Hudson. You got hyped off of what's the other guy's name that was here that went to the Panthers?
Hayden Hurst. Of course.
This guy would blow those guys out of the water.
Yeah.
I guarantee it. He'd blow these guys out of the water, and everybody be back talking about him. Oh my God, we didn't realize how great he was. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, and Matthew Heitzman said, I believe the same thing, but I'm saying if the Bengals can't land Fant, all I'll say about this is there are very good tight ends that can be very productive. Noah Fant is definitely at the top of the list. Harrison Bryant can be a productive tight end, but respectfully, if you're heading into the NFL season with Harrison Bryant as your tight end 1 for the Cincinnati Bengals, you're in the same boat as you were last year, in the same boat as you were the year before with Hayden Hurst. Harrison Bryant definitely hasn't proven all that he can prove in the NFL, but
listen, based on what Duke Tobin said as well, too, I want to discuss this. He understands that tight end position is a position that they need to finally settle down and lock down because, as I told him, it has been a revolving door, and he agreed. He said that's not what we're aiming for. So what better way than to sign a 26-year-old tight end who has not been utilized properly, doesn't have a lot of wear and tear. You could sign for a 4-year deal, and you get the most out of it. And did I forget? You probably can get at a discounted rate because he's already gotten paid, and the production was not there, not to his own fault, though. It was the play around him. I believe that. He was with the Broncos, and he was with the Seattle Seahawks. And if you look at it, no tight end in that Seattle Seahawks system put up gaudy numbers.
Yeah, and people are asking about the money. Once again, guys, like Mike Gesicki, what was it? Got 3.4 last year?
I don't think people understand how small the the tight end market has shrunk so much that I don't think people understand. They're not going out there getting, tight ends are no longer signing these crazy deals. And I don't know if they really ever have, honestly, for be honest, unless you're paying your own guy. But the tight end market was so bad last year that guys like Mike Gesicki had to sign for a 1-year deal, $4.5 million. That's a fact, right? So
yeah. So once again, Noah Fant, he would not command a lot of money. He's even said that he wants to play with a contender. So
I got one for him.
1000%. We got Stefan said would love Cooper DeJean on the Bengals. We had this discussion too, and even for me, when I look at him, he is a great cover 3 corner. He is a great zone corner, but the man-to-man reps weren't on full display. So round 1, Cooper DeJean DeJean with the talent you already have at cornerback, I personally would not be a fan of. But we got a question from CJD22K. He said, "Who day, gents? Would you guys say this draft is more loaded at offensive tackle or defensive line? And should that be the position that the Bengals capitalize on in this draft?"
Probably defensive line.
Yeah,
I think it's not by a huge wide margin, but probably defensive line.
Yeah, I think the defensive line is way deeper. The offensive line is more, what would I say? The defensive line, in my opinion, you've got 2 clear-cut first-round grades, and then there's a little bit of a drop, and the rest are kind of second, third-round grades. Offensive tackle, you've got the 2 at the top, and then you've got the 4 that are mid, late first round, early second, like the Mims, like.
But
the
then you have to ask yourself why, right? Like,
Yep.
why are they? If it's not a talent thing, well, is it injury, right? In Mims' case, it's injury. Why aren't they, right up there with those guys? Why aren't teams clamoring to just draft them all off the board? Because in a league that's starving for offensive tackle help and offensive line help, you'd think that those guys would be, easy plug and plays.
Yep. Honest Fan said, "Who day, fellas? What's going on, man?" We have a couple questions. Matthew Heitzman said, "Why do most of the Bengals high draft picks on offensive line? Normally, they haven't worked out." Obviously, you have, I guess some people would say Jonah Williams hasn't worked out, but I mean, why would you say the offensive linemen normally haven't worked out for the Bengals?
I think that is an interesting question. Listen, I'll say this. All right. It's going to take a little bit of time.
No,
I'll say this. I think that in Jonah's case, I think Jonah was better in some instances than people give him credit for. I think he got a bad rap because we spent the 10th overall pick on him, or whatever pick it was, right? Was that top 10th? It was whatever overall pick we spent on Jonah
10th
Williams.
or 11th.
And I think that when you draft a guy that high, especially a guy that's coming in with the chops that everybody's talking about Jonah, you expect him to be all pro elite level Trent Williams type deal. And the fact of the matter is that's just not every player in the league. No matter, sometimes we have to be able to separate the draft status from the player.
Yeah.
And I love the quote Tom Brady, Bill Belichick gave. It's not about where you get drafted. It's about what you do when you show up, like when you're here, right? And I think that's a situation where I feel like Jonah sometimes was unfairly treated, especially playing with dislocated kneecaps and stuff like that. But even furthermore, I'll say this, Jonah Williams came in from Alabama and he was widely praised. He came into Cincinnati with an offensive line coach that was teaching them the punching hand technique that hasn't been taught for years. So basically everything that he was taught at Alabama was what? It was undone. Because you have an offensive line coach telling you, this is the way that I want you to teach things. And I'm not giving an excuse for John, I'm just being honest. Jim Turner was awful. He was horrible. And he undid a lot of good things that players learned. And another thing that I heard this week was the NFL sometimes ruins players, meaning sometimes the coaches ruins players more than the players ruin themselves. And I believe that. I think sometimes it's about where you land, ego, yada, 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 the whole 9 yards. And I think Jonah Williams was in a tumultuous situation with Jim Turner for 2 years?
Yep.
Then Frank Pollock came about and had to unteach all that and teach him the correct way. Well, in a position where he was not necessarily the greatest at because of size or whatever, it wasn't that great, right? But then just when you feel like you're starting to get your footing at left tackle, you dislocate your kneecap. Then it's like, oh, by the way, you're no longer starting at left tackle for us. You're starting at right tackle.
Yep.
So then I feel like he has had a roller coaster of a ride here in Cincinnati. And I think if we're going to tell the story, we have to tell it in totality. I don't think the Bengals did right by him always. And I also don't believe that I don't believe the notion that Jonah Williams is a bad player. I don't believe that.
Yeah. No, I'm with, especially just when you look at at the offensive line in general, and this is what all GMs and coaches were saying, everybody's looking for great offensive linemen. Everyone is. So if you have the opportunity to draft one at pick 18, you've got to make sure it's the right fit. And what I've seen is I love Joe Alt. A lot of dominant defensive linemen have said Joe Alt is by far and away the best offensive lineman they've played. Joe Alt's great, but besides that, obviously Olufushanu is very good. But these guys like the Mims, like the Guyton, in my opinion, Jackson Powers Johnson is the offensive lineman I would be looking at. We have a question here from Mason Shelley. He said, if we draft edge in round 1, do we cut any of the current weaker edge depth? You would have to. You would have to. I mean, like, you can look at the depth, whether it's like a Cam Sample, Jeff Gunther.
I don't think Jeff is yeah.
So, I mean, are you really going to roll with Cam, Sam, Miles?
I'll say this, Osai, right? I mean, he has left nothing to be excited about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll
leave it at that.
I'll leave it at that. I'll I don't want to get into the whole cut. I mean, you'd have to make some tough choices. You'd have to. It's a no-brainer. You just have to.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, it's getting into who that might be when we don't even know the draft positioning. A lot of it is you hope to kick guys into gear as well. Like Miles Murphy being drafted should kick everybody out of gear. Miles Murphy stole snaps away from Joseph Ossai. It's very clear he's higher up on the depth chart at this point than Joseph Ossai is. He's got to get it going at some point, and all likely Joseph Ossai might have a better year, might whatever, and then go on somewhere else the following year. That's how this thing goes, right? But the ideal hope, I hope Joseph Ossai has a great year, and you have to have a conversation like, damn, maybe this guy could be Trey Hendrickson's replacement when Trey Hendrickson's ready to hang it up, or when Trey's contract is up, or whatever the case may be. So, like, we don't know.
And that would be a very good problem to have. So Joseph Ossai, hopefully gets it going this year. We can definitely go through some more questions if you want.
Yeah, we can do a few more.
CJD22K said, could the Bengals draft a cornerback in the first round? We discussed this, but he said to replace Mike Hilton since this is his last year of his deal.
That's a next year's problem.
And even respectfully, like, this is something you can target this round 3. You can target corner, because I mean, Mike Hilton plays a very specific role. That specific role with those guys that are going round 1, like the Nate Wiggins, like the Terrion Arnolds, like the Cooper DeJeans, they're not going to be slot cornerbacks.
Right.
They are playing to be a number 1 cornerback. So,
somebody did ask though earlier in the comments, what do I think about Mike Sainristil from Michigan? I love him. I love him as a player. Don't put me in that spot, okay? Because I have an attachment to him, not to Michigan, to the player. Like him a lot. Think he's a good player. He's one of the few players in the drafts that could play inside and outside.
Yep.
Very high upside swing. I'm a big Mike Sainristil guy. Believe in him. I'm excited about his future, whether it's wherever it is. I think that guy's a gamer. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. We've got a couple questions. Sean Brennan said,
I love the combine.
Yeah.
We're literally talking right here, and Brad Holmes is just casually walking by us. That's the cool thing about the combine. You see so many different faces. How about when we first started and Harbaugh's coming down the thing, and they were like, the guy asked Harbaugh, who's got it better than us? He's like, I know that answer.
Yeah.
You got to just love the combine. This is what makes the combine the combine.
And you can tell, even just like the coaches, they have personalities too. Like,
yeah, man, beyond the coach speak stuff. Yeah.
Like Mike McDaniel walking by, and then you can just hear him goofing around. He's got his backpack on. You can tell these guys, like, they're football nerds. Like, they love the game of football. And this is like one of the most exciting times, obviously, for us in the media, but even for them too. You got to learn about a new batch of prospects.
Tonight's gonna be fun. Tonight's gonna be fun, hanging out with some coaches, some GMs, and maybe getting some scoops. I don't know. I'm just going to have a good time.
Completely. Always good to have a good time. We got a question here real quick from Matthew Heitzman. He said, will Lou ever roll with 3 linebackers, and what talent would you need to run a 3 linebacker in the AFC North?
Man, I don't know if I'd see that. I think his scheme is his scheme. I do think he's open to changing things, but it's worked for him. It's really worked for him. And I think that the only scenario in which I would see him running 3 linebackers is if you have your 2 linebackers, right? And then you have your quote unquote linebacker that is really a stand-up edge rusher.
Yep.
like that could drop back into pass coverage at times. And I think that's a good problem to have, right? You have a guy that can disguise. You don't know if he's coming on a rush. You don't know if he's dropping back into coverage. But again, the talent has to match up with, right, the scheme, if you will. Like in a perfect world, Akeem Davis-Gaither, who I believe in my heart could have been utilized better here in Cincinnati.
Yes.
I think he would have been a guy that ideally fit that role, fit that mold of being able to rush past. I mean, literally, you look at the way he was used at Appalachian State. He was literally used that exact way. Hey, rush the passer. No, be a QB spy. Hey, no. Like in a perfect world, ADG is a guy that's spying on he's a guy that's spying on Lamar Jackson and, you know, stopping these quarterbacks from trying to run for 10 yards or 15 yards of pop on you, right? But for whatever reason, didn't work out in Cincinnati, so we move on.
Yeah. Real quick, I guess just to kind of wrap up, you know, today's portion of the combine. I mean, we talked to, just to give people, you know, a little insight. We talked to Mason Smith, defensive tackle, Leonard Taylor, Braden Fisk, Devondre Sweat, or Byron Murphy, Jazon Newton. We talked to all these guys, and a lot of them, I mean, they've got a lot of potential, and the combine portion is kind of just a part for us to see, you know, like you said about Rook from Clemson, man, just to see the passion on these guys' face and just to see them light up talking about football, talking about, you know, this is a great time for them. Like, I mean, they're about to fulfill their dreams. So it's really cool to see this portion of, you know, their career.
For sure. Guys, we have nonstop coverage, nonstop content coming for the rest of the week. I appreciate all you guys, all 100 plus of you guys spending a quick, you know, part of your afternoon with us for an hour to discuss all things Cincinnati Bengals, potential draft prospects, and much more. I'll be coming up to you guys live, not live necessarily, but with a bunch of content. I'm excited to have that Brock Bowers conversation tomorrow, but to keep you guys updated nonstop. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the First Star Logistics Studio or the NFL Combine. Yeah, keep it locked to the YouTube channel. Make sure you also subscribe to the First Star Media Group's YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our content, short form, long form videos that we have coming all throughout the week. Because guess what? As much as it feels like we've been here for a while, we're just getting started. But until next time, guys, I hope that you guys have a great evening. Appreciate you joining us on this impromptu Bengals State of the Jungle show. And until then, who